Most people who cycle are white male, right? That's a problem. As we go through our budgeting process, we should do what we're going to do with our comprehensive plan and move equity into the process as the starting place. And I think that also expands to our agreements with our tribal neighbors, the sovereign governments, whose nations that land we occupy.
This video was intended to inform and educate the public.
Robert, would you please introduce yourself and share with us why you want to serve on the City Council and what skills and knowledge you bring?
Of course, thank you. I want to be on the Olympia City Council because I believe that our government can produce groundbreaking policies and achieve objectives and improve the quality of life for current and future Olympians. I don't see public service as an affluent pastime. I'm running because I believe in good governance. It was the Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis who created the term laboratories of democracy. The concept that government can test and experiment policy on the local level to improve our democratic systems. I am the descendant of Irish and German immigrants and poor West Virginia union coal workers. I was born in historically underserved Baltimore. From age 7, I was raised by a single mother in a poor farming and Rust Belt, Ohio community. After high school, I worked and paid for my education class by class. After a 7-year run from community college to my master's in public administration, I am a renter. I make less than $40,000 a year in income. I travel by bus, bicycle, and walk. This allows me direct feedback from the public, such as the Olympian who struggles to travel across town because the sidewalks are not ADA compatible, or the elder I spoke with at Saturday's farmer's market who told me it took them 4 hours to travel across town to their doctor's appointment because of our car-centric development model. These are the underserved Olympians that every day rely on local government to be there for them.
Each of us comes from a constituency or interest group. How will you reconcile that constituency's desires and goals with the broader goals and needs of the city and the community?
Well, I believe that there is wisdom in the public life. I believe that there are truths hearing public feedback, that qualitative feedback in public forum is important. I do, however, understand that policy is almost never direct route from being written to approved. And so in a lot of ways, I believe that because of that, it requires negotiations in the art of relationships, human relationships. And so in a lot of ways, there will be conflicting views. There'll be issues that the public does not agree upon. There'll be friends of mine or colleagues of mine who will want me to vote on certain issues a certain way. And I have to balance that. I have to balance that because, like the City Council, certain members will have different policy perspectives and different lived experiences. And that produces variations in deliberations. And of course, that deliberation makes better policy.
Here's the question for everybody, but Robert, for you first, what do you view as important attributes of a successful council member?
What do I see as the successful attributes of a council member?
The important attributes of a successful council member.
Yeah. Well, I believe part of that is that human relationship, understanding the public, but I also believe that part of that requires a little bit of that understanding of how policy works, an understanding of how it's the judicial branch and that it doesn't have unlimited powers. I think that part of that also is understanding that the relationship between our advisory committees, our executive branch, understanding the limits of what the City Council can and cannot do, our intergovernmental and interjurisdictional agreements. These agreements and these methods are what create good policy and most importantly, how we budget our policy. And so I think that understanding the structure, understanding the history of that structure, understanding the interconnectedness across the community, of getting policy done is the successful route, I believe.
So over the period of this appointment, the City Council will be completing the 10-year update to Olympia's comprehensive plan. We are required to plan for population growth with an additional 20,000 residents joining our community by 2045. How would you incorporate equity in planning for the future growth of our community? Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah. Wish I was like that all the time. Yeah, but, we are integrating equity and climate into all the chapters of the comprehensive plan update. I've been notified about this last summer. I had a conversation with Joyce Phillips about this. I think that's a great start. But I believe that we can adopt stronger strategic planning in our comprehensive plan by looking at our budgetary practices, because that will be the other thing we have to worry about in the next couple of years. By systemic improvements. So, for example, some of our sub-area plans, the Triangle sub-area plan, maybe our neighborhood centers, which is akin to a 15-minute neighborhood plan, those plans should include in our equity clause to look at who are the people who are going to be in these new neighborhoods, who are going to be in this new development, especially as we're looking at stronger urban practices and land use that can create a tax-positive mixed-use districts. So when we build these neighborhoods, when we build the new Triangle in the next 20 years, if we start building these neighborhood centers, we really have to consider, are these going to be local businesses? Who are the identity of these people being here? Are they going to be of a certain income or a certain background? So when we look at those plans that are in the process now, and we look at that data, we should study that data and use it as an example of when we start looking at our comprehensive plan.
The climate crisis is often positioned as a conflict with housing development or economic development. How do you think the city can best combat that conflict? Do you want me to just do it again? Yeah. Okay. I provide the levity here. The climate crisis is often positioned as in conflict with housing development or economic development. How do you think the city can best combat that conflict?
So, as you pointed out, when we're dealing with climate, we have two parts here. We have our climate mitigation planning, which is our intergovernmental and interjurisdictional climate committees, the inlet restoration possibly, or the current estuary restoration, but that also includes the second part, which is our impact reduction, right? That's what you're talking about with the fact that the two largest carbon polluters in the county are transportation and housing. And so in order to square that with the high cost of rent, the high cost of buying a house nowadays, these very large systemic things, we're going to have to work really hard to plan out our neighborhoods and our communities in a way that we have different types of modeling for owning homes, ways for people to go from renting a home to buying their home, ways to, in the next few years, work to expand the accessibility, because we don't have the time for climate change. We also don't have that backlog of housing that we have a shortage of. And so in a lot of ways, the City Council is very limited in what it can do with that, especially we've done some incredible things in the last few years with reducing our parking minimums, with the home fund, other projects, right? We've looked at ways that we can get around managing rent without doing rent control because of the state laws. And so in a lot of ways, I do think that there's a lot we can learn from other cities and other governments that are going through the same growth. And so there's a lot of shared knowledge there. So I think the solution is going to have to be more grants funding from larger government, from the state, for the federal government. But I also think it's going to require shared information and working together with our partners throughout the Puget Sound.
Robert, I'm going to repeat the question. It's as much as for you as it's for me. So how do you see decisions around equity and the alignment of the city's goal playing out in the budget? What approaches should we take to really turn the tide?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting intersection that we're doing here. So I think that the city has two main primary responsibilities when it comes to the budget, right? That's your main basic services, your utilities, your streets, your fire department, city staff, so forth, right? And then there are the issues that residents demand we respond to, the things that are outside of the traditional norms, right? You know, that's walkability, that's access, safety concerns, so on and so forth, rent, mental health, the environment. So I think that Olympia has an important role in developing policies that create equitable outputs and outcomes, right? And so some of that is very basic level. That is community events. That is allowing people to know that we have the various cultures that make up our community, right? But beyond that, I think that we have to expand our outreach efforts to communicate with groups and individuals who either have suffered from systemic racial, cultural, or social inequity, right? These are folks that are last spoken. And the reason why I think that they should be crucial to our budgeting process, moving it from the demands to the norm, is that as we go through our budgeting process, we should do what we're going to do with our comprehensive plan and move equity into the process as the starting place. And I think that also expands to our agreements with our tribal neighbors, the sovereign governments, whose nations that land we occupy. But I also think that includes supporting BIPOC businesses that are taxpayers, that provide for the community, that help with the budget through their taxes. And so I think those are the places that we really should start at.
All right. So I have the next question, and that's going to go to Robert. And that question's around public safety. So I'm asking, how familiar are you with our work on reimagining public safety? And what are your priorities for public safety services in the community?
My understanding of public safety can both be part way of infrastructure and safety for people to cross the street safely, but that also includes our crisis response units. That includes our attempt to implement body cams and the funding needed for that. I believe that expanding those services in the next few years is going to be very important, particularly as this new public safety tax comes in to ensure that, our crisis response unit gets more people and methods along that line. Now, from an urban, like I said, from an urban planning perspective, I do think that safety can be not just response to a crisis or police cameras. It can be your ability to cross the street safely. It could be, is it safe enough for my kids, if I had kids in the future, working on that, be able to ride their bikes in the street and not have to worry about those things. So safety for a lot of people in Olympia is, their ability to participate in the public in a way, with the public in a way that they don't feel harm is going to come upon them. And so I believe that we've made strides by doing the crisis response unit. When I talked to my mom about this process, the Sydney, Ohio, where she lives, don't have anything remotely close to that, and they have the same crisis that we're going through. And so I think that we've made good strides there, and I think we should continue down that path.
And Robert, what are you most eager to learn, and why?
I'm eager to learn about what policies could be created on the interjurisdictional level, right? The Thurston County CRPC, and various other intergovernmental agencies. I'm very interested in seeing, what ways are problems that we're dealing with now when we reach those aha moments, those policies that we're not really clear on yet, right? I have spent a lot of time learning about urban planning and a lot of time learning about the various aspects of that. But, I really do think that I could gain to learn more about ways in which that intersects with other policies. So, the question about budget and equity, I really do think that equity isn't always brought up when it comes to urban planning, right? Most people who cycle are white male, right? That's a problem. That's a deficit. that we have, right? I think that thinking about where these chapters in our comprehensive plan meet, right? Ways in which we can meet one solution while trying to think about another problem. Those are the things I'm very much interested in, especially as we work from a local level with a limited budget.
So that concludes our questions for this evening. So congratulations, you've made it through the first iteration of your interview. But at this particular time, we'd like to offer you this opportunity to give us 2 minutes of closing comments.
I would also like to thank everyone else for coming out tonight, the City Council, the staff. I mean, it's getting late. For their time and opportunity, for my time and opportunity to be interviewed. If I'm chosen, my priority in the next 2 years will hit the ground running with a fresh perspective, with an idea of clear understanding of city policy and priority-based budgeting, comprehensive planning and policy. I do have the experience of working with the staff on BPAC and in-state projects at LNI and support services. I do have an educational background specifically designed to legislate and advocate for the public. I am looking forward to any opportunity there will be, either now or in the future, to work with the community at large. If I'm not selected, I will continue to work what I can for the community. And so I appreciate your time.
All those in favor of appointing Robert Vanderpool to Olympia City Council position number 6 signify by saying aye. 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 Motion passes. Congratulations. Yeah. Hold on. That's tomorrow night. Okay, so with no further business before the Olympia City Council, we're adjourned.
We will not give up.